Welcome to HD Nation, your guide to the best in HD content and the best in home theater gear, no matter what your budget is. I'm Patrick Norton.
Hey, and I'm Robert Heron.
You are reviewing this.
Yeah.
Which was one of the most expensive HD TVs we've ever seen for the size.
Now available on sale, permanent sale, I would say. It's the W900A, and we're going to get into that in a bit. Sony's new beautiful set, I will say. Yes, and you know what? I believe Patrick's been repairing scratched discs again, and for once, it's not a horrible child-related incident, but it's actually Revision 3 Games, actually Rev 3 Games trashing their super secret copy of GTA 5 by ejecting the disc while the console was still spinning it rapidly.
Oh, Adam.
Not a good thing. Hey, did you get your toothbrush and
The
toothpaste?
classic traveling fix. I like when. So people used to carry music on discs, much like Blu-rays called CDs, right?
A few of those in my car.
It's kind of funny. Scratches that kind of radiate from the center out aren't too problematic. Scratches that cross the way, so the data is written in circles. Scratches that run across that, I don't know if you can see it there. I created a nice messy set of scratches there. That's like the worst possible kind of scratch for a disc. And the deeper they are, the more difficult they are, because essentially the laser hits them, goes nuts, and the data essentially jumps, right?
Totally.
So
there's a bunch of error
reading.
correction on there, but if that scratch is following the track it's trying to read, there's not enough data being read in order for it to correct the problem it ran into. So
you know, you eat a little diatomaceous earth. Great way to find that is with toothpaste. You can put a little bit of toothpaste on there, get your finger wet, and run it from the inside to the outside of the disc like this in an attempt to eliminate or remove the scratch, polish out the scratch. It was kind of funny. So Sessler hits the eject button. The disc is still spinning. There's this giant series of scratches on the outside rim, and then a center scratch. Spent like 40 minutes polishing with toothpaste. Disc was too trash for toothpaste. Which brings up my favorite fix. They sell them on Amazon. They sell them at Best Buy. It's the Digital Innovation Skip Doctor.
Hey now.
Yeah, they start at like $15 for the one with a crank. You do not want to be sitting here and cranking this thing around for days. I mean, it's adorable. It's got a crank, right?
I've cranked a few discs.
You've cranked a few discs. The motorized version is way cooler. It's more expensive, but look, it's really simple. You take the disc, so it's got this wheel, and you can't really see it, but when I slide the disc in, it's going to put an abrasive on the wheel. So somewhere around here is a bottle.
This bottle.
That bottle, yes.
Dun, 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 dun.
You can also spit on the disc if you run out of the magic fluid, but essentially you spray the magic fluid, and the manual is going to tell you to insert the disc and let it go for 2 revolutions. By the way, put the disc in gently, don't slam it like I just did. And look, kids, it's polishing. Isn't that exciting? And so there's abrasive material on the outside of this rim, and it's just going to keep grinding around. Now look at the disc. You can see those scratches. Those scratches are good scratches. They run from the center of the disc to the outside, and you'll notice 2 things going on. 1, you can hear it slowing down. 2, you'll see that the scratches, the bad scratches run horizontally, are still there. Now, I'm going to stop this now before the noise drives us nuts. They'll tell you to, like, run 2 revolutions.
Totally.
Run it till you can't see the bad scratches or the disc works, number 1, right? Because there's actually a pretty thick layer of plastic. So it's big, thick layer of plastic, data, incredibly thin layer of plastic, and the label. Whatever you do, don't scratch the label side. If the label side's scratched, you're probably doomed because it probably goes through the information you actually want to protect. Get the AC wall wart. They used to ship an AC wall wart in the box with this. It's currently powered by 6 AA batteries.
Holy cow.
And there's nothing wrong with being powered by 6 AA batteries, but the motor in this chews through batteries really fast. Get the AC wall wart. This will actually work better with a steady supply of electricity from the alternating current in your wall. One last thing. This version is for CDs, DVDs, Xbox, PS2, PlayStation, right, if you can still find one, PlayStation 2. They have a new version that's Blu-ray specific, basically a different wheel, I would imagine, because is it polycarbonate on Blu-rays?
It's different. The very top layer, at least on some of the discs, was an extra tough, thin coat. And it's not as thick as the discs that you would normally deal with CDs and DVDs that are almost about 1 millimeter thick as far as the polycarb goes. The Blu-rays had to be they had to get the data closer to the surface, so in order to make that work, they've come up with new hard coat technologies, but it is a different type of material than the polycarb, generally speaking. Some Blu-rays, I want to say, are polycarb on the outside surface, but for the most part, I believe it was TDK that came up with this coating material that basically enabled Blu-ray technology.
Essentially, they have a slightly different wheel for the Blu-rays that deals with the Blu-ray.
I'm wondering if it's a little tougher, maybe, because of the extra toughness of the Blu-ray coatings that they use in order to protect the thinness of it.
It's really, really hard. As somebody who had his oldest son climb up, before he could walk, he climbed up on the back of the chair, went up to the top of the chair, braced himself up against the shelves, and then like was leaning, whipping Blu-rays. He apparently thought this was the best sound. I told you this story where the sound of like, what is that noise? And I walk in and my son's throwing Blu-rays over his shoulder. Blu-rays are pretty hard to scratch, but once they're scratched.
Flashback to me as a kid with 45 albums.
Well, I bet your parents loved you.
Yeah, they were with me. And we lived on a hill that you could really fling stuff off into the netherworld. And anyway.
28 to 45 bucks, depending on where you buy them. Thumbs up. I really wish they sold it with the wall wart, the power supply built in, but it's a 9-volt, 1-amp power supply you can find pretty much anywhere. If you have a lot of scratch discs, especially CDs, these are the bomb.
Totally
Digital Innovations, Skip Doctor. And now let us talk of the Sony KDL 55 W900A, and it's a 1080p 55-inch LCD.
That's it exactly.
Okay.
One size. The W900A is kind of an odd cat as far as Sony TVs go. One screen size is available with this, 55-inch, like Pat mentioned.
Weird.
1080p resolution, edge lit with local dimming, which is something you don't see a lot on today's edge lit displays, except in the premium class. This was in that price class, I would say, because of some of the technology it incorporates that we'll get into. However, there's been a price reduction recently, so this TV is even more attractive on that level. 4 HDMI ports, one is MHL enabled, also 3 USB ports, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in.
I know why it's MHL enabled. We'll talk about that later.
Okay. And this is, I consider, one of their premium designs. Some of the touches they put into this include a swivel base stand, a quartz cut design, which is a cool piece of glass that they've layered over the front surface of the bezel that not only catches light nicely, but it also adds a little scratch resistance, I would say, to the unit itself. A nice remote control, as well as a one-touch remote control. It's a simplified remote. If you don't want a remote full of buttons, they've got one with far fewer buttons that actually works just great. And it's one of those nice touches you usually get on a premium set. Totally. Also, remote control overall provided snappy, precise menu navigation. That I appreciated. Also, if you're a Sony PlayStation 3 owner, this is a 3D TV that's also compatible with Simulview. That allows you and a friend to enjoy the screen wearing the 3D glasses, but certain games, there's only about a handful of them, but they do allow you to do 2-player, where each of you has a full view of the screen that's completely independent of each other. That's pretty cool. Now, the big deal about this TV is going to be its color technology. We're talking their triluminous color, which is a quantum dot technology. Now, if you're not sure what that is, that's just crystalline particles that are manufactured that glow specific colors when they're stimulated. Now, in theory, the better a backlight is generating white light. Now on all LCD televisions, there's a white light behind the screen that's shining through a colored sheet of plastic that makes the pixels and the colors that we see. Well, if you can make a better white light, a more spectrally full white light,
you
will get better results out of your typical LCD panel, because the color filter then can be optimized, or better optimized, to produce good color. But we'll get to the benchmarks in a minute, but let's start with some gaming stuff though. I use this Leo Bodner lag tester that we've shown you before. This is the best TV I've tested to date. A 19.3 millisecond delay. That's less than a frame per second on any of today's games. When you turn it off, it went up to 103.7, but you really don't care. When you're gaming, you can turn that on and enjoy some of the best performance on any TV I've tested to date. Now, for SpectraCal's CalMount 5 software, using the TV Cinema preset, I started off with a 2-point grayscale, and you can see that it's a little bit bluish when it first starts there. But I was able to achieve a fairly low error rate once I tweaked it a little bit in the white balance setup. Now, this TV lacks a 10-point grayscale balance, which most premium TVs have nowadays. That would allow me to help flatten out that grayscale balance curve that you see there at the end. Now, CalMount 5 software, using their color checker tool, revealed one of the best measurements I've seen from an LCD to date. And again, there is no color management control built into this TV. So for people like me who like to tinker with things, I would be really curious to see if things could be improved even further with a little bit of proper control over the color situation. Now, the luminance sweeps test is something I really don't show very often, but this verifies that basically a color at different brightness levels is the same color. And this shows you that as the points stack up on the primary and secondary points there, they're pretty darn close. It's actually a pretty good result. Sometimes on TVs, especially with reds and other things, you'll see those points start to scatter around. It's like every shade is a slightly different hue, and that's not good. This TV does really well on that. Now, diagonal filtering. That was one thing where I found the performance to be a little less than perfect. Basically, this is the suppression of jagged edge artifacts. So say you're looking at a wall at an angle and you've got lines through it or something like that. In real life, we wouldn't see jagged edges on something like that, and on a TV, you wouldn't want to see that either. And this TV, just with all the content I threw at it, I didn't see so much in real world content, but every test pattern I threw at it that specifically looks at this issue, it was there. Now, this is something that's perhaps fixable with a future firmware update. Now, my viewing tests for Dark Knight really showed off this TV's terrific contrast, including bright, saturated colors. I love this new disc I'm using a lot lately called Samsara. It features some beautiful, colorful outdoor scenes, including a tree-filled landscape with golden temples. This was especially detailed and well-saturated on the new 900A. Hugo is my 3D test of choice. Detailed 3D, using the latest firmware update actually on this set, but the overall picture quality in 3D mode was a little blue by default. It's not, I mean, I didn't have time to calibrate it. That would be one thing I'd go back and do next. And while I was watching that movie, I just noted very good sound quality overall. Good stereo separation, almost a warmth to the sound that I really don't expect from, or I really have no expectations when it comes to thin, flat TVs.
So basically, anytime you have a flat panel that doesn't make you wince anytime you hear sound coming from it, that's a win for flat panel speakers.
Without a doubt. And it's nice to see, because not everyone's going to go spend money either for a home theater and a box kit or a sound bar, or ideally a nice AVR receiver with a 5.1 sound system like that. But yeah, it's good to hear good sound finally coming from thinner TVs. And really, I gotta say, the triluminous tech, the new color technology using quantum dots and blue LEDs, it's the real deal. In the 900A's colorful picture, decent calibrated grayscale performance, and good picture contrast, making it a really pleasing TV to view. And with the lower price point, now hitting at $2,000 for the 55-inch version, which is the only version of this model available, that's pretty cool. And if you've looked at some of the 4K TVs too, they also feature this, quote, triluminous color. And if you think you've heard that term before, triluminous, back in 2008, Sony had the XBR8 LCD television that featured something called triluminous, but that was actually using a red, a blue, and a green LED as the backlight unit.
Right.
And that was an amazing TV, although at a price point that was incredibly expensive, but beautiful nonetheless.
So given you can get a pretty high quality 55-inch HDTV for $1,000 to $1,500,
You can.
Who should specifically be looking for this? People who want the absolute ultimate color experience?
The best I've seen so far, especially out of the box. And if you can get it calibrated, the white point, as far as the grayscale, it starts off a little blue. You get that flattened out a little bit, and it really helped overall picture quality. I also like the fact that it's providing local dimming in the sense that it's dimming specific portions of the picture when it's black in order to produce a better contrasted picture. And you don't see that much on edge-lit LCD televisions. Usually you get none at all, or it's only on the premium models, and in this case, that's another reason you're spending a little extra on it. And if you like some of the design touches too, like the swivel base isn't so much of a premium item, but I'm kind of digging the glass-topped, the quartz-cut bezel design. It looks good, and hopefully that glass will add a little, I don't know, scratch proofness over time and make it just keep its beauty longer.
At Super Patty tweets, at Robert Heron, how do you integrate your Blu-ray rips into Windows Media Center as though they are regular discs? At Patrick Norton per Twitch 234. It is so awesome, and it's a really simple application.
Totally. I absolutely love this. My Blu-ray rips are managed by the wonderful MyMovies application. And basically, it can be used free of charge, but I ended up paying for it so I could access its automatic features like library management. It actually monitors a folder on my NAS for new additions or deletions, and it updates its database automatically. It's really handy for large collections. I ended up, this software actually found a few things that I forgot I had put on there, and it organized it quite nicely. Now, this works in conjunction with my Blu-ray disc player software and a virtual drive program on my home theater PC, basically to handle the mounting of the image files and the playback of the movie once it's loaded.
I think we're going to need to do an entire segment which goes from, okay, have a Blu-ray ISO, you load the software you need to play Blu-rays inside of Windows Media Center, then you teach it how to mount virtual discs and using MyMovies to sort of knit the whole thing together into a cohesive interface.
It may sound difficult, but it's really just a matter of loading a couple of programs, and then Windows Media actually takes care of a lot of it on the back end with the MyMovies magic, which is just, it's easy. It's easy.
This screen, though, it's amazing. Like, his entire Blu-ray collection looks like
what
this.
It looks like.
It's so awesome.
And you have full control, too, over how that displays. If you don't want the 1080p icon on your 1080p movies, you can turn on and off all that stuff. The nice thing about paying for it, also, if you don't have the money to buy the software, they actually have a cool system where you can contribute things like jewel case cover art and information, say somebody who's missing about who's in this movie and blah, blah, blah. If you contribute that kind of information, they give you credit for it, and that applies to your account, and then you can buy the upgrades and stuff like that. I'm lazy. I just bought it. I've been using it for a few years now, though, too. So I look at it over the long term. And just like I said, the automated features alone for large collections really, in my opinion, makes it priceless. And I absolutely love it for that reason.
And let's say that one more time, ladies and gentlemen. MyMovies.dk is the website for
yes,
that
it
one.
is.
Erik writes in from New York. He says, Dear Robert and Patrick, why don't the television manufacturers use calibration tools like the AVS HD and other perfect calibrations out of the box? Just seems like an inexpensive way to make their products look better. Thanks, Erik in New York. I can tell you exactly why they don't do it. Because you'd have to have a warehouse full of humans, right? So the televisions would come off the assembly line and then they would be put on a table in a really dark room, because you actually need an individual dark room for each individual television. So the televisions come off of the assembly line, they get delivered to an individual dark room or an individual calibrator. I guess they could automate the process. An individual calibration machine would individually calibrate each individual HDTV. It just takes time.
You're putting me out of a job. Yeah. No, but you're right, though. That's ideally how it would be done. And Erik, that's a great question. They do receive a factory calibration before they are put in the box. It really comes down to the question of what is the quality of that calibration. Some companies on some models, usually the least expensive ones, will take, you get one set, they'll test it, take those results and apply it to the rest of the inventory. Right. Also, I've also seen it where each set is individually tested and calibrated before it's boxed up and put away. Those tend to be more expensive sets. Also, you could have somebody like THX, send a model to them, they optimize it with a couple of presets, maybe a day and a night mode, send that back to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer would take that and then apply it across the line. Maybe not having THX look at every stinking model that comes off the assembly line, but the other issue is variances in components that go into the TV itself. There could be differences in the LCD panels, in the electronics, slight differences that add up to changes in how one set from another looks. And also, you're going to have variances over time as the HDTV ages. That's just something that it really then becomes, you know what, it'd be nice to have good color and grayscale adjustments that we can then fine-tune the display to near perfection in the future. Now, ideally, we'd have something like a color or light sensor that would be built into the screen, and the TV would regularly auto-calibrate itself based upon the room lighting conditions. That would be the ideal, and I could see this actually coming in the future on premium sets where they have some software built in, or if it was built into the screen, that'd be the best. But if they couldn't do that, maybe have something like a USB puck that you would plug into the TV's USB port that would trigger an automated calibration function, similar to what you run into if you plug in, say, the microphone on an AVR for doing a room setup. It usually will detect that being even plugged in and go, oh, I guess you want to calibrate the room. Well, they should have something similar like that with premium TVs at least. But if not, there are plenty of people out there who will do quality calibrations for a good fee.
What's that website?
Come visit me.
HeronFidelity.com. So just as thinking about this, does the calibration, or should my calibration change as I go from a dark room to a bright natural light room to different temperature? So ideally, my television would react to the ambient lighting in the room and adjust its color to suit.
If for no other reason, just to make it comfortable. You should not be staring at a bright screen in a dimly lit room. And likewise, when there's lights on of any kind, feel free to crank it up as bright as the TV can go and as much electricity as you feel like consuming, although it's really not a case with LCDs nowadays. It's more about plasmas, but that's it.
And every television is calibrated somewhat.
Somewhat.
From the factory.
Like I said, it's either going to be done by the manufacturer. They'll have one from the series, and it says, okay, we're going to apply this as the average to every set in the line. And then I have seen in the manufacturing lines themselves, with the TV face down, the person putting the screws in the back of the TV to finish it, and while that's happening, the two light guns come up from underneath, touch the screen. It internally runs its own calibration setup, usually pretty good. And then it's also, too, yes, it'd be nice to be actually calibrated per room, but that's what light sensors are for, and it all kind of adds up to that. So there is some work being done, but all of that, any bit that they touch a TV for any reason, it's going to cost you more money in the end. So it's all a balancing act between how much can we really charge you for this and will you buy it versus how good can we make a picture look.
There you have it. From the We Didn't See That Coming department, hot on the heels of their Vita set-top box, Sony announces a Bravia Smart Stick, essentially an MHL dongle that runs Google TV and Sony's Bravia app. Sounds really exciting. Go to Engadget.com, read all about it, and find out that it's not only $149, but the dongle only runs on 2013 Sony MHL-ready Bravia HDTVs.
Ooh.
But if you want Bravia apps in an expanded Google TV environment,
Amazon.
And you bought a TV from Sony this year.
They have a good selection of apps on that. Like I would like to see the Chromecast. I don't see why the Chromecast couldn't do everything they just announced on that, but
It could.
It could, but I hate seeing it locked into just Sony hardware too. That's the one thing.
Well, all I gotta say is, for me, in more personally useful news, Amazon has added AirPlay and direct IMDb integration to a new release of their instant video app for iOS, which means apparently I can now, when I get home, stream Amazon Prime instant content to my Apple TV. This is exciting. The IMDb integration, apparently you'll be able to get the cast, crew, and trivia information you get, say, on a Roku box or the desktop, running on your desktop. And apparently we'll be able to download multiple files at once, and the overall UI experience in iOS will be snappier.
Nice.
I'm excited.
That's great,
I'm
man.
going to test this when I get
just
home.
being able just to kick off an Amazon video or something like that and just have it appear on the screen, that's almost like modern magic.
Running Amazon Prime on an Apple TV, that's modern magic.
Yes.
What's left? I guess Google Play, maybe? Okay, we're getting there. Hey, before we go, I got to address a common request we get in emails to hdnation@revision3.com or down there in the YouTube comments. Y'all want the show in 1080p. Why isn't a show about getting the best in HD in 1080p? And, well, considerably less charming demands involving novel combinations of words like ass and hat.
One of the strange things about HDTV is that it approves a collection of resolutions and refresh rates, interlaced and progressive. There's an amazing book called Defining Vision that documents the twisted process that decided the NTSC's digital replacement. It could be 1080i, 480p, 720i, 720p, 1080i, and 1080p. Do I want 480i on my 1080p screen at home? Probably not.
No, and actually, it's available on Amazon. Joel Brinkley wrote it. It's an incredible book called Defining Vision. If you're curious about HDTV and how it got so weird, this is the book that tells you how broadcasters lured the government into inciting a revolution in television.
Fascinating read, actually, and it pretty much comes down to one engineer sitting in a room crafting some cool new digital technology that's pretty much changed everything. Compression. It's all about compression.
Which brings us back to this show being shot in 720p. Do we want to shoot in 720p? Not really, but it scales okay to 1080p, and it uses less bandwidth on downloads, which means it costs us less. But actually, the reality is our frickin' studio is 720p, and we're not ready to spend 30 grand upgrading cameras or moving HT Nation's production to DSLRs just yet. My apologies, but 720p is what we've got for now. We will continue to experiment to get you the best viewing experience we can with the equipment we have access to, and when we can, we will move the show to 1080p. I promise you that, but it's just, it's non-trivial.
It is in the future.
Yes.
We'll just go right to 4K.
We could also point out that, yeah, you and I in 4K.
And Ultra HD.
The only thing less pretty than him and I in 1080p is him and I in 4K.
That'd be, I'm not going to say what I was thinking.
Don't say it. That's it for this episode of HD Nation. Please subscribe, revision3.com/HDNation.
That's right, and please email us your comments, questions, or suggestions, or post them right down below. And until next time, thank you for watching.